Good morning, Husker fans. Welcome back to the Husker Big Red YouTube channel. I'm Chris Peterson, and joining me as always is Danny Gillette, my co-host, and we're back today on this Wednesday morning, and we're going to talk about a few things that are happening with Nebraska sports. We've got spring ball getting started this week, so we're going to have some early spring ball takeaways after Matt Rule met with the media on Tuesday. We'll have some transfer portal rumblings for Nebraska basketball, as well as some recruiting nuggets. We'll get into all that stuff. Before we do, please make sure you hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, and get into the comment section. Danny, how are you doing on this Wednesday morning?
Hopefully, I'll get to your level of professionalism and awake. But right now, I'm a little sleepy. But I'm excited to talk Nebraska sports. So there is that.
Yeah, there's quite a few things to talk about this week. Spring ball, as we mentioned, got started on Monday. We have the transfer portal has been open. There's been a flurry of activity with the Huskers. So yeah, let's start there. It's been interesting to see so many players jumping into the transfer portal. I think there's been over 1,000 who have entered. Nebraska's been in contact with quite a few, but they were able to make some headway with Pryce Sandfort of Iowa, according to Robin Washut of Husker Online, as well as some others who have confirmed that he's going to be taking a visit, I believe, today to Lincoln, Nebraska. So he's a 6'6" forward, averaged 8.8 points per game last season, shot 40% from the three-point line, only 2.9 rebounds per game, averaged about 22 minutes, but would be a pretty big addition for Nebraska early on in this transfer portal, window.
Yeah, Fred has mentioned that he's wanted shooters for this offense. We saw a little bit of three-point shooting last season, like you alluded to. Connor Esigian actually had as many threes as Casey Tominaga, and so there were spurts of three-point shooting, but I think I said this before, but I'll say it again. When you watched the Creighton game in the first round last week and how well they shot the three-point shot, that's the type of offense that I believe Fred wants to run. And in order to do that, you need more shooters. And Sandfort would be, he would definitely qualify in that category. And it'll be interesting to see if there's any numbers that are going to come out in regards to NIL offers or things like that, because I'm very curious to see what Nebraska's price point is for NIL, what they are or how they value certain prospects, And so on that end, I'm very interested to see, what can they do in the transfer portal? What's their budget? And how, can they land big name players, or is this just, passing through to Creighton?
Yeah, we'll see. I know Creighton is hosting Josh Dix and Owen Freeman from Iowa already. So, that's going to be, tough to combat if they get those guys. Obviously, Nebraska's not in the same conference, but Creighton will be pretty loaded there if they're able to get, a couple of those players. I know Josh Dix is someone that Nebraska, could really use and want, but doesn't seem like they're going to get much traction there. They haven't expressed any interest in Owen Freeman, so who knows about that one. But yeah, Sandfort would be a big get. I mean, they do need more three-point shooting for sure. And he's been a proven producer. He's a 40% three-point shooter. I think this is a really important visit for them. They've been in contact with some other players as well. Another name I think that's pretty interesting that would fit really well is Nick Graves from Charlotte. He's a 6'3" guard that they've been in contact with. Obviously, with Bryce Williams, the last guy they got from Charlotte, it worked out pretty well. But the thing is there's a lot of teams that are interested in this guy. Just like Sandfort doesn't have a huge list of teams of interest that I've seen, but like Nick Graves, I mean, Michigan, a bunch of other schools are in there. There was already a big that Nebraska was the guy from Valpo. Nebraska's already been essentially eliminated for him. So that's been kind of disappointing. But just kind of how it works with Cooper Schweiger is his name from Valpo.
Good player.
He's down to Northwestern, Wake Forest, Clemson, and Michigan already. So, that was one of the bigs that Nebraska was in the mix for, and he's fallen by the wayside. So, I mean, it's going to be tough, but I think, Pryce Sandfort is a big opportunity to get, a starting caliber player from the Big Ten. Could probably slide into, Juwan Gary's role. Different player, not the same defender. Needs to be a better rebounder, but he is a quality three-point shooter. So I think that would be a nice building block for the Huskers to add with Rienk Mast and Connor Esigian.
Yeah, Rick officially announced he's coming back on Monday. Not to jump topics here, but that's really big news. I mean, we kind of knew it at the end of this season, because it was speculated he would come back following this season. But good to have him officially announce he's back, and that's huge in my opinion.
Yeah, getting Rienk Mast back is big. I know I've seen some people that are like, "Oh, it's not that big of a deal," or I even saw somebody say that he's not like a Power 6 player. Well, he was an All Big
Yeah,
Ten
he was.
performer his last season that he played. So I think people are underestimating, his impact. He scored over 12 points a game. He had almost 3 assists per game. You look at last season, what was one of the things Nebraska was desperately missing? Playmaking. They didn't have
Yeah.
any playmaking outside of Bryce Williams. They basically had none. I mean, Raleigh Wooster was not a playmaker, and he,
He
you know,
wasn't.
so I mean, that's the scary
Yeah.
thing is you look at last year we felt good about this transfer portal class and ended up
Yeah.
giving Nebraska a whole lot of nothing. I mean, really,
Yeah.
Andrew Morgan was solid, Asijan was good, but everybody else kind of stunk. So I mean, they really have to get it right this time, and Sandfort would be a good start. Nick Graves would be really good because he's a scoring point guard, and I think Nebraska needs that. They need somebody, obviously, with Bryce Williams leaving, they need somebody who can fill it up. He scored 17 points per game last season, and I just feel like that would be a great fit. So we'll see where it goes, but they need a point guard. They need another big. I know people don't love, William Kyle. I know they're kind of down on him because he didn't have great numbers at UCLA last year, but to me, he would make a lot of sense for Nebraska. He's played in the Big Ten. He shot 70% from the field. He had, 0.6 blocks per game in 9 minutes. So it's like, I don't know that his defensive rating was also pretty solid. It was like 1.00, in terms of points per possession when he's on the floor. He just didn't have a role for UCLA. But if he came to Nebraska and played like 20 minutes a game, like I think he could start. I think he could start for Nebraska. And, he's probably not going to cost a ton in NIL. He's from the state. I think he's a good defensive player. And he'd be, if you had Berkey, Rienk Mast, and William Kyle as your front court, like I don't think that would be that bad. So, I mean, that's another name that I haven't seen any connections to, but to me, I just think it would make a lot of sense. And Nebraska needs rim protection. He's not a great low post scorer, but he can finish down low and defend people. And as we saw last season, like that's something that this team really needs.
And I know he's kind of a shot in the dark, but Jalen Jackson, I would love Jalen. Like he's the type of player that Nebraska needs immediately. There's going to be a lot of competition for him. He's a very talented player, but man, I would love Jalen Jackson on this roster. He could do so much with this offense.
Yeah, Jalen Jackson would be another great addition. A scoring kind of point guard, 6'2". He's got the relationship with Connor Asijan. Connor kind of mentioned him as a guy Nebraska should target, even last week. But yeah, 19.2 points per game last season, 3.1 assists. He played at Illinois, Chicago for a while. He's from Purdue, Fort Wayne. And what's interesting, he shot 41% from three as a sophomore last year, just 26%. So, there's maybe, concern, but 1.6 steals per game, 3.1 assists. So yeah, he would be a great pickup. They need a dynamic point guard who can fill it up, and somebody who can, in my opinion, who can score and make, when teams play, like drop coverage on you. Somebody who could step in and hit that jump shot. Nebraska did not have that last season, and so it was like, I mean, they couldn't really even run ball screens. I mean, outside of like Bryce Williams, they didn't even have a point guard that they could realistically run a ball screen set with and do much, because Raleigh can't shoot and he can't score. So it's like, I mean, like he literally, that's why they're playing Sam Hoiberg. And that's nothing against Sam, but Sam's not, like that Iowa game, Sam took like 11, 12 shots. Like he's not the guy you want shooting the ball. So they need to get a ball dominant point guard who can fill it up. And, Jackson and Graves, one of those two guys would be perfect, but we'll see if they can get one of them on campus for a visit.
At this point, I just want anybody who can score. So anybody who can score, come to Lincoln, Nebraska, and at least take a visit, because we saw a lot of these visits last year. Frankie Fiddler was a guy that Nebraska had in last year, and he ended up going to Michigan State. So I mean, it seems like close but no cigar when it comes to transfer portal in recent memory for the Huskers, and I'm hoping that trend changes. Again, I think it's all going to come down to the NIL budget and how Nebraska values its, transfer portal targets monetarily. And again, when you have Creighton in the state, it makes things hard.
Yeah, it does because, like Josh Dix wanted to stay close to home, which could have had Nebraska, be in the mix because he's from Council Bluffs, Iowa, which isn't that far, but Omaha's right there too. And, when they can land another one of his teammates, those are two of the top players in the portal. I mean, if Nebraska could get Josh Dix and Owen Freeman, I mean, they'd be pretty well set. Although, I mean, maybe Freeman wouldn't be the greatest compliment to, Rienk Mast, but it's never bad to have two like talented big guys. You just have to play a bit of a different style that way. But at any rate, I really do. I like Rienk, and I think you have Berkey, who's probably going to come back. If he can be your four, you've got Connor Esigian, you add Pryce Sandfort as another starter in there, then you get a dynamic guard. That's basically your starting lineup. Maybe you could add someone like a William Kyle or another big like an Andrew Morgan, somebody like that. They need another guy who can protect the rim and can actually finish inside, which Berkey I think is getting there. I think Berkey is going to be a huge piece of this program in the sense that he needs to take a leap next year and just go, because he had his moments like the Ohio State game, I want to say.
Yep. Yep.
He hit a bunch of three. He was actually like one of the outside of Bryce, I think he was fourth on the team in 3-pointers, outside of Bryce and Juwan and Connor Sejan. I think he had the most on the team. So there is a lot of upside there. And you had a shooter like Sandfort. And if you could get like a dynamic guard, like a Jalen Jackson, like you really could have something and surround him with, two shooters. You flank him with two shooters in a Sejan and Sandfort. And then you've got Rienk Mast who can shoot the three and some other guys. There's still, I think, some solid pieces to build around here. And having an all Big Ten player in Rienk Mast is a very good building block, even though, there's a segment of the Nebraska fan base that doesn't really believe in it.
There always is. There always is. I mean,
there's always the negative. There's always the negative Nellies out there.
And those are the people that don't watch. So, I mean, I don't really take too much stock into their opinions. But anyway, I think Nebraska has a chance to do some really great things in the transfer portal. And I think this team, as it stands right now, with the players coming back, I think it's a good, group of players. I just hope they can hit on who they need to and, try to, outbid other teams. Again, for me, it comes down to the money. What's their price point? How much are they willing to spend? Because we've seen some NIL budget estimations go as high as, $10 million? So yeah. I don't know if Nebraska is going to spend that much, but I'm hoping they can at least get into maybe like the 7 to 8 range. I don't know if that's even realistic, but
yeah, it's possible. I mean, it's just going to be difficult for some of these teams to compete, but hopefully Nebraska, they've said that they've upped their NIL game, and hopefully that's true. I guess we'll find out here with Pryce Sandfort, because I think if they do have the NIL on point, this feels like a recruitment that they could close very quickly.
Yeah.
So, and then, we did have the new court release yesterday before we get to football. I thought that was pretty sweet.
Cool, yeah.
So another nice move by Troy Dannon. So he's doing a lot of good things, and we'll see if he's giving Fred Hoiberg the support that he needs on the NIL front. Anyway, let's switch over now to spring ball. Started on Monday. So Coach Matt Rule met with the media yesterday. They've had practice on Monday and Tuesday. They practiced before he met with the media yesterday because they had pro day after, which was also kind of interesting. We got to see Dylan Raiola throw a little bit, looking pretty good.
Yeah.
So there was some interesting, I think, takeaways from what Matt Rule said that we're going to kind of roll into the spring ball takeaway, since we haven't, really, not like we're seeing practice, but he did clarify about Dylan Raiola that he wasn't up to 240, but that he couldn't play it that way. And he said it was unfortunate that some took it that way. I didn't necessarily see that it was taken that way. I just think that, Dylan was a little heavy last season. So, I mean, it is what it is. I mean, I get that sometimes Matt Rule says is taken a little bit out of context, but, I don't think that was too out of bounds, I guess.
No, it was just something that the haters and the, again, weird segment of Nebraska fans that want him to fail that ran with it. So, it is what it is.
But I thought one of the most interesting things that he said was about the running back position. He was asked about, Quentin Ives and Mekhi Nelson and some of those guys, and if they, had the ability, I guess, or the kind of wherewithal to be, the running back two, or to, kind of hold off Nebraska from going to the transfer portal. And Matt Rule said, like, with Quentin Ives, the biggest issue is just he hasn't got the opportunity. He's got the talent. He's 210 pounds and can run, is what Matt Rule said. He also called Mackay Nelson, a dynamic back. Jamarian Parker's up to 190 pounds. So there's a lot of things to like in that room. He did say it was an important spring, though. So doesn't seem like he's officially ruling out adding another running back. But what do you think about that room going into the spring?
A lot of unknowns, but a lot of potential. And I think when you have a guy like, Nelson, for example, he really showed flashes and he was really impressive at times during practice last season. And then you have, Jamarian Parker up to 190 pounds, I believe it was. And like you said, and he, to me, could get playing time this year. Like, he's a guy that I could see taking the field this year. And as far as Quentin Ives is concerned, he's been with the program for a few years now. And he I believe he scored a touchdown in the Pinstripe Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. So he was able to get into the end zone. And so I know fans probably wanted another transfer portal running back, and I know, Emmett's the main guy, but I am really curious to see the returns on the rest of the running back room because I do think there is talent there. It's just unknown. And like I said, I believe that could lead to opportunities for Parker to be able to, really make his stamp early within the program. And I don't think that's a bad thing because you see in today's, game, even when they're starters, they can go to the transfer portal. So if other teams, if Parker doesn't play and he wants to go to the transfer portal, some teams offered him a boatload of money, then that could be the case. So my thing is just get these guys as much playing time as possible and take it from there. There's no real, I think, benefit to keeping them on the bench anymore, or else you'll lose them.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, if they're ready to play, they need to play. We'll see how the competition kind of bears out during the spring.
Yeah.
You do have to be good in the passing game, which I think Emmett Johnson proved that he was last year. We'll see about Quentin Ives. I mean, that's going to be a big point. But Matt Rule emphasized that too, that he does well, catching the football and pass protection. All those stuff is going to be really important. And if they. It remains to be seen like what talent's even going to be there at running back in the spring window. So, I mean, we'll see what happens. I wouldn't rule out, them adding another running back, but if they believe in the guys that they have, I mean, that makes sense to go forward with them too. I think another question for me, we talked about that, but they do need to, the defensive line depth, I think still, is a little bit of a concern. I do like the defensive line. I mean, I mentioned that the other day, but, I was thinking about this, say Riley Van Poppel gets hurt. I mean, one or two injuries to this defensive line could really drastically affect the defense, especially, you're looking at Van Poppel or Judy, like one of those interior guys. There's just not much depth there. And, in terms of guys that could realistically probably play like the nose tackle or that like zero technique position, there's probably two guys on the roster.
Yeah.
And that's not very much, going into a Big Ten season. So, I mean, if they could get another 300-pound dude. I mean, they got Gabe Moore as well, but if they could get a guy that's like 315 in the portal, like that'd be great. But again, sometimes it's wishful thinking, hoping that you'll get guys in the transfer portal, especially along the offensive or defensive line.
Yeah, I was going to say the fact that we got two offensive linemen in the portal was quite the feat in of itself. But I'm very interested to see, how the defensive line shakes out. And you're right, injuries are something I'm worried about. So I'm hoping they can, stay healthy and develop along the way. And honestly, on the running back front, just real quickly, one more name he mentioned was Rowdy Bauer. So who knows what the running back room could look like. And I think there's depth there. I think there's depth at the running back in the running back room, whereas on the defensive line, you're kind of thin, but we'll see how everything shakes out and hope everybody has a healthy spring. Cross our fingers.
Yeah, that's a big hope. Obviously, there's some guys in the offensive line, dealing with some injury issues. So we'll see how some of those guys kind of come and develop. But yeah, I mean, there's a lot of competition, I think, in the secondary. Matt Rule talked about that too, and Malcolm Hartzog kind of being that nickel back, which isn't really new. That's kind of something that we had basically what he played at last season. Deshaun Singleton, he talked about moving him around a little bit, but I still feel like, the safeties are going to be Singleton and Hartzog, as well as Marcus Buford. I'm more looking at that cornerback battle with, Donovan Jones, Andrew Marshall. So we didn't really learn a ton about that. But, I think we will, going forward, it'll be interesting to see, how that shakes out. But, I think what's interesting is that a lot of the position battles outside of offensive line are positions where, multiple guys are going to play: cornerback, wide receiver, running back, defensive line. So it's more just like, what does that hierarchy look like when it's all said and done? But the offensive line is going to be interesting, though, too. I keep hearing a lot of good things about Henry Leftoski, and people are really high on him, potentially right tackle. So to me, that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, and you kind of wonder where the chips are going to fall there, because there's a lot of new names as well as old names just in general on the line, like Turner Cochran, Teddy Prohashka. So you wonder how that's going to fall. And then you had a guy like Rocco Spindler say that this team may be more talented than his Notre Dame team. So I don't know how much you want to read into that, but I mean, to me, when you have a veteran say something like that, that's a good sign about where the program is right now.
Yeah, that definitely that caught my attention too. I thought
Yeah.
that was interesting. At
Mhm.
least, he said the same amount of talent. And I don't think that he's that wrong. I do think, looking back at last season, I do think Nebraska underachieved with what their talent level was, and I think they have the talent, to win 9 games this year, and the schedule to win, 8 or 9 games this year. People every time. It's so funny because they, post like Fansided had an article about Nebraska being one of the teams like breakthrough in the playoff race, and so I posted the graphic of that. And you have some people that are realistic about it, and some people look like there's like no shot in hell of Nebraska, like it's just the most ridiculous thing ever. And it's like, I understand why you think that and why you have that mindset, because of the offseason championship mentality of Nebraska for such a long time. But like, this team does
Which I can
have,
understand, yeah. I mean, yeah.
yeah, but this team does have the pieces. Like, if Raiola can take the next step in his development, he looked really good in the spring. I'm just saying, from a physical standpoint, watching him throw the ball yesterday at Pro Day, like, he looks in very good shape. And I mean, the defense, like, I know there's depth issues, but even Ty Robinson said, like, I don't think there's going to be much drop off on the defensive line, and I feel like he would have pretty good insight into that. Like I said, depth is always a thing, but if they can stay healthy, I mean, on this defense, I feel pretty good. Like, all 3 levels, I feel pretty confident in their ability to get stops and at least be as productive as they were last year.
I think they have a chance to be better than they were last year, because I feel like, yes, they were still a top 20 defense last year, but I feel like some of the stats were misleading. Like some of the games, like the Illinois game, for example, even the games early in the season, like Northern Iowa and stuff like that, they kind of struggled giving up big plays and stuff. So, um, I feel like this defense could definitely be better than what it was last year. And I feel like you're going to see a lot more of the younger guys, like the Shavers, who I'm really excited about, McGahee, like those type of guys really, kind of craft their role in this defense.
Yeah, and yeah, like, what does Shavers do? McGahee, Dawson McCullough. I think it's going to be really fun to see what he
Mm-hmm.
does.
Yeah.
There was an NFL scout that told Sean Callahan he was like a unicorn. So I mean, I think they're going to use him as a pass rusher, but I do agree with that. Yeah, I just think this I think where this team could be better. It's in the man-to-man coverage ability and then the cornerbacks, because like last year, as we kind of mentioned off the air, like Tommy Hill just never was healthy. Sayer Wright was good, but you didn't really have that number 2 corner after Tommy Hill got hurt. Donovan Jones was there at the end of the season, and now that he's had a chance to take a leap, and you have Andrew Marshall, who was first team All Big Sky,
I'm really excited
which
about
is,
Andrew Marshall. Yeah.
yeah, and the Big Sky, like I know about FCS, but the Big Sky is one of the best conferences. So like, being first team All Big Sky isn't nothing, and he was the only cornerback to make it too. So like, he legitimately is a big time player, and I feel like just they're going to be able to man up and match up, with teams that have like 3 good wide receivers. Nebraska just couldn't really deal with that last year, and I feel like this year, they're much more capable with their cornerback depth, and even having a guy like Malcolm Hartzog who can kind of play that nickel role instead of having to try to be like a boundary corner.
Well, it's the same thing with Marquise Buford. He's much better at the safety position than he is as a corner. And I
Yeah.
think having that corner depth, I mean, the problem last year was, once Tommy Hill got injured, the lack of depth at corner really got exposed. So they just kind of had to mix and match guys until they found something that kind of worked, and even then it was a struggle. So I don't think that's going to be the case this year. I think Hartsock is going to be much more comfortable at safety position. I think same thing for Buford. I'm really excited about Marshall, not only in terms of his defensive ability, but what he can bring in special teams. And I think that's an area I'm going to be really watching over the next couple months as Mike Eckler, begins to leave his stamp there. So, I feel better about this team this year than I did at this time last year. I feel like a lot of things were addressed, but of course, we've thought this before. I thought this in 2021, and look what happened. So, I do think Nebraska has a chance to make some noise this year. I'm not gonna say they're gonna win the Big Ten championship or anything like that, but I do expect at least 8 or 9 wins this year. I don't think that's unrealistic.
Yeah, I think they need to get in that range, 8 or 9 wins, or fans are going to get even more restless than they already are, and so we'll see how that goes. Wanted to touch on some recruiting things here. There's not a ton of recruiting stuff going on. I mean, we're seeing more visitors crank up with spring ball. There is a really important visitor coming in this week on Thursday. That's going to be quarterback Trey Taylor. The 4-star from he's from Illinois, right? I'm blanking right now on where he's actually from. But so Taylor, he visited Illinois this week, actually. Also visited Michigan. So he's kind of taking the spring visits. Notre Dame is also one of the schools in the mix for him, Texas A&M, LSU. And he's going to be making a commitment this summer, very early. He said he really could commit at any time. It seemed like he really liked his Michigan visit. But, that's not to say that Nebraska can't wow him either. He's said a lot of really impressive things. So it feels like to me it's pretty important for Nebraska to get Trey Taylor. Otherwise, I almost feel like they're going to have to reset their quarterback board. So I don't know. How important is this visit with Trey Taylor this week?
I really like Trey Taylor, and he likes the business school, which I think is important because he's looking at things academically as well. It's not just a football fit. I love his arm. I love what he brings to the table, his vision. And I think this visit is really important because obviously you have Dayton Raiola and, you have TJ Lateef for, a couple years. But I think this visit is very important. Nebraska's been in this recruitment for quite a while, even dating back to last year. So I like Nebraska's chances, but they do need to make a strong impression on Thursday.
And excuse me, he's actually visiting today. I had just got my got mixed up there. So Trey Taylor is visiting today on Wednesday. Nebraska's also going to be hosting Keegan Croucher later this week, who's a top 100 quarterback in the 2027 class. They haven't offered him yet, which I think is interesting. He might get an offer during this visit. I think it kind of depends how things go with Trey Taylor.
Yeah.
But it seems like right now Keegan Croucher is kind of the second guy in their kind of quarterback pecking order, which is also the same with Michigan. What's interesting is that Michigan leads according to the On3 prediction machine with both. Of course, that's not like predictions, but just based on visits and things like that. So I don't know. It is going to be interesting to see how they proceed with the quarterback position. They've got Braylon Warren too, the in-state quarterback, who's getting more offers. And that they haven't really expressed much interest in yet. So it seems like to me that might be the third fallback, if the other guys, don't really work out. But they do have some other targets on the board. I do think they have a good chance with Trey Taylor. But keep an eye on Braylon Warren because if things go south with Trey Taylor, I feel like he might end up being the quarterback in this class because I just don't have a lot of faith with Nebraska and Keegan Croucher. I just think he's too highly ranked. And I just feel like his recruitment is going to go more national. And I'm not sure why it hasn't already. I mean, he's a top 100 quarterback in the composite. Like he's ranked much higher than Trey Taylor right now. Not that rankings are the end all be all, but I just think that, that's going to be a tough recruitment to win for Nebraska. So it feels like to me, it's going to be Trey Taylor. And then if that doesn't work out, maybe you have to shift your attention to Braylon Warren, who is a pretty strong in-state quarterback that, Arkansas, Cincinnati, Kansas State, Kansas, Iowa State, Missouri, you're getting more Oklahoma State, Boston College, you're getting more and more teams interested in him. So they might need to shift their attention, towards the in-state quarterback at some point.
Yeah, I feel like Trey Taylor is the kind of not the holdup, but everybody's waiting to see what he does, and then they can proceed at the quarterback position if you're in Nebraska. So Wednesday's visit is a big one, and I'm hoping they can make a strong impression. I'm hoping they can land him because I believe they're also recruiting one of his teammates. I can't remember the name off the top of my head, but they're going into the Illinois area, the Chicago area, and seeing what's out there. And Taylor would be a nice get for a program that, look, they have TJ Lateef, they have Dayton Raiola, kind of still developing and waiting in the wings at the high school level. So Taylor would be a nice kind of bridge quarterback in that sense.
Yeah, Taylor would be a great development piece to have there. So yeah, we'll see, how that goes. Just looking at some other visitors coming up here in the spring. Pretty loaded schedule. An important one, for the summer visits is going to be CJ Brona, because he continues to, take other visits. Just in the past week, he's visited Florida State, Florida, and North Carolina. He had a picture with Bill Belichick the other day. So those are three of the schools in the
that was
mix.
so cool. As a Patriots fan, that would be awesome.
And then Penn State also very much in the mix. Oregon working their way into the mix. So CJ Brona really becoming, he's been the top commitment for Nebraska, but really becoming a commitment that might be difficult to hold on to at this point.
Kind of reminds me a little bit of Kawan Lacey. not to bring that back, but I mean, it just goes to show that the staff has a keen eye at talent and, identifying talent early. And the trick is, as you mentioned, holding on to it. So this is a problem that a lot of programs have, and, it's part of recruiting and things like that. But, man, I hope we hold on to CJ.
Yeah, so his latest ranking now, 129th overall in the composite rankings from 24/7 Sports, the 14th ranked cornerback. Just a dynamic player. Ran a 4.39 in his latest 40-yard dash at one of these, high school recruiting events. He's had the fastest 40 time in every single event he's been at. So I mean, that tells you something too. But the fact that he runs 4.39 in addition to the 10.3 100, I mean, this dude is dynamic. That's like I said when he committed. He's got everything that you could want in a college cornerback and a guy that you're looking at being a future NFL player. So it's probably gonna take $1 million to get this kid signed, like NIL wise. Like no joke. That's how good he is.
I mean, I'm sure they have it, but I hope they're willing to spend that on him because he is a talented player. But if not, I mean, the reality is there's going to be a lot in the transfer portal the next couple of years, and the transfer portal. I mean, you saw the job that the program was able to do this offseason, so who knows? But I'm hoping they can hold on to CJ.
Yeah, I think he would be one that's worth paying. So hopefully works out that way. And then we'll close up. Nebraska had their pro day yesterday, which was a big day for guys like Bryce Benhart, Nash Hutmaker, who weren't invited to the NFL Combine. Ty Robinson didn't work out. Neither did Isaiah Nair. Thomas Fedoni did some of the drills, but they didn't like run and stuff. Those guys kind of rested on what they did at the combine, which probably made sense because they all performed extremely well at the combine. So there wasn't really much room for them to grow in terms of what their production probably only go down. So that made sense. I guess maybe one of the biggest pieces of news, Tommy Hill still not able to work out, still being lingered and brought down by that injury. So it's disappointing because I thought if he could get healthy and run, he probably would get drafted, but now that seems like that's probably not going to happen for him.
That plantar fasciitis is a killer. I mean, it really is. I mean, you have that, and I remember, my mom had that at one point, and she it just hurt to walk. It hurt to do anything mobility wise, and when you're a corner and you have to cut and run and jump and things like that, I mean, it's just so tough. And I'm hoping he can, teams take a look at his game film and see what he brings to the table there. But even then, there's probably not a ton there from this year, maybe last year. But I just feel so bad for him. I really, really do.
Yeah, it's tough to see him because if he had stayed healthy, I think he would be in contention to be a first round pick, and the defense
easily,
obviously would have been a lot better. So they might have been able to win like that USC game, maybe if they had Tommy Hill, or Hell, even Illinois. I mean, he wasn't
Yeah.
right for the Illinois game. So I mean, losing Tommy Hill may have cost this team a couple of games last season. Like, no joke.
Yeah, I don't think they had the depth or were ready to lose Tommy Hill as quickly and for as an extended period of time as they did. And we saw that at times last season. And yeah, so it was just a bad situation for everybody, honestly, last season. And I'm really hoping, a team takes a flyer on him and he can get healthier and live out his NFL dream. Because, man, I feel so bad for him, especially when you consider, how he came to Nebraska was originally just an athlete, went to wide receiver because they weren't sure where to put him a couple of years ago, then found his home at corner and worked hard to become one of the best corners in the conference. And man, it does make me sad.
Yeah, hopefully he gets healthy and gets a chance to resurrect his football career in the draft. So that's all we got for this show, you guys. There's going to be plenty of things happening on the rest of the week, so we may have another show on Friday. But keep in touch and make sure that you guys hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, get into the comments section, and check back for some updates. You can also check HuskerBigRed.com and Cornhuskers Wire as well, where Danny and I produce some written content. So check out our stuff there. And as always, go Big Red.
Go Big Red.